Okay, so welcome, Fiona. I'm so excited that we're going to have a chat today. I just thought it'd be good to start off with can you just introduce yourself to my audience and just share a bit about like your background and how you came to be doing Fiona's Food for Life?
Yeah, super. Thanks so much for having me, Jules. I'm delighted. So my name is Fiona Staunton. The business is Fiona's Food for Life, and I aim to make cooking good food uncomplicated. So I do it through real-time cookery demos, and as I cook, I share all of my tips and tricks from over the years. So my background is that I qualified as a home economics teacher.
All
So
right.
I got my degree in education there. And then I headed to Ballymaloe Cookery School, which
Amazing.
we would say certainly it's an internationally known cookery school, but I'm not 100% sure how many people in Australia would know it. But
Oh,
it's
well,
a really
I
nice,
know
it's
of
a
it.
great. Oh, I think you've got Irish connections too, don't
Yeah,
you?
I do. I
Yeah.
do. But I knew about
So
it
it's on a
before even
on.
then.
Okay, yeah, great. It's on an organic farm and it's totally immersive and it is amazing. And then I worked for a year under the head chef at Ballymaloe House, set up my own catering business. Then went to Australia for 8 years
Oh, that's right.
and worked more in event management there, in and out of some different corporate catering. And about 7 years ago, came back, had kids. 7 years ago, started doing these cookery demonstrations, seeing that if people could taste, smell, and see things, they're so much more likely to make it than, say, just looking through a
A
cookery book.
recipe book. Yeah, so true. So true. Yeah. Okay. And so tell me like so you did train as a chef. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah. So how did you find like transitioning from like catering and chefing to like domestic kitchen and helping people like cook without having an army of sous chefs?
Well, I love helping people solve a problem, particularly around food. So, and I'm a mother with kids and I have aging parents, so I'm cooking at home all the time. So I knew that a high intensity restaurant kitchen was not for me.
Yeah, right.
I didn't enjoy that environment. Now, I have to say, the one that I worked in was so nice and you were respected, and it was a really, really nice environment to work in. But I have tried others, and the hustle and bustle of a restaurant kitchen just is not my style. So the catering or I suppose the connecting with people and that environment was much better. So I suppose haven't had years in a high-end restaurant kitchen. So, and I just love seeing the difference that it can make, yourself when people are empowered and can cook nutritious foods for themselves, the difference that you're making is just huge.
Yeah, right. So it's more rewarding helping people
Yeah,
learn to fish rather than just giving them a fish.
absolutely. Yes, that's it. Exactly.
Yeah, great. And so tell me a little bit more about, because I know you've been on a bit of a journey with, like from a hormone and
Mm.
health perspective, Fiona. So do you want to just share a little bit about that and how that's been playing out for you?
Yeah, absolutely. So, um, so COVID is probably the easiest time to describe when it all happened. So, in the first lockdown, my father died suddenly,
Oh,
and
I'm
he had
sorry to
been
hear that.
caring for my mother who had broken her pelvis, etc. And he was the more mobile one. So I needed to step in, or I did step in and take
Mm,
over as the role of her carer. And there was already a fraught relationship there anyway. So it was challenging.
that's a big
Um,
job. Plus, with a during
yeah,
a pandemic.
yeah. So that was the first lockdown. Then the second lockdown, I think the universe sent me a message that I was doing too much and I was diagnosed with breast cancer. So I would say to anyone out there, I didn't find a lump. What I found was I had breastfed, and when you'd breastfeed, I would feel you'd forget which side was next. You couldn't remember which one you had emptied the last
Yeah.
time and which one still had milk in it. So one felt firmer than the other. That's exactly how it felt. I went to the GP and she said, I don't think it's anything, but we'll get you checked. It turned out there were two small tumors, but they were 6 centimeters apart. So they said I'd have to have a mastectomy. And when they went in a couple of weeks later, there were four tumors. So it was a very fast growing cancer, but I caught it very early,
Amazing.
which
Yeah.
was great. So again, that was in lockdown, nobody visiting, 8-hour surgery. I got a reconstruction where they cut from hip to hip and they taken fat from your tummy, which was I'd built up over the first
Amazing. Bonus.
lockdown. Yeah. And I got a reconstruction of my own fat tissue. So that was okay, and I was able to manage that, and I was at home, and do you know, one of the things from a food perspective I did, Jules, is I bought a large freezer and I filled it up with food before I went in for my operation
Amazing.
to
Yeah.
know that I would always have really good nutritious food to hand afterwards. So that was okay, but then they said, thankfully, I was able to avoid chemotherapy and radiotherapy, and I know everybody's journey is different. But I was put in induced menopause because my cancer is estrogen positive, so it's driven by estrogen.
Ah, right.
So I thought, oh, that's fine, that's just menopause, but it's not really. What it means is that,
Yeah.
so in perimenopause, your estrogen levels will go up and down all the time. And that can be over 5 to 10 years. So when you go into an induced menopause, it just off a cliff, estrogen on the floor overnight. And I also need to take medication to block the hormones. So the progesterone, the estrogen, and the testosterone to keep them all at bay.
Right. Right. And to
So
manage the cancer and to stop recurring is,
exactly. So, and the way that that's done is I get personally, it's a monthly injection, quite a wide bore monthly injection into my tummy to shut down the ovaries, and then a daily tablet. And the reason they did it that way instead of removing my ovaries was because if the symptoms were so bad that I couldn't function, well, then you've got to weigh up between the cancer coming back and your life,
right.
your quality of life.
Right. So
So,
this is like you could reverse that. You could just stop taking the injections if you wanted to. Right. That's
exactly.
amazing. It's so fascinating, like all the options that medical, like modern medicine can consider these days. Hey.
Yeah, and even 6 months into it, I'm kind of slightly digressing now, but 6 months into it, I decided to go for the option where you take an injection once a quarter because it's certainly not on our medical card here. So it's quite expensive every month to be
Mm.
paying for those drugs. So I thought, well, look, I'll just try once every 3 months because I've now managed the once a month. And oh my God, Jules, I got hormone headaches for 3 months every single day. And any exertion I did whatsoever would just exacerbate
Yeah.
them, and it was horrific. So I'm back on the monthly ones.
Right. 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 And so
But
what, yeah, like I'm kind of
what it
curious,
means
like
for
what
me
is
is
it?
that I
Yeah.
can't have any hormone replacement therapy. So that is definitely a no-go for me. And the way the symptoms were for me, and it's different for everyone, is to get up from the couch and go and make a cup of tea. I could hardly walk. I'd have to hold on to the wall. And by the time I would be coming back with a cup of tea, my joints would have limbered up a little bit, but I would be very stiff. The fatigue and insomnia was totally debilitating for months. So I'd be wide awake in the middle of the night and
And then
exhausted
exhausted
during the
all
day.
day.
And the brain fog was huge as well. I remember driving up to see my GP because I was just so not myself and so worn down, and I was going through them in the list in my mind, and I was counting out the symptoms that I wanted to talk to her about. And I was going, there's one more, and I can't think of it. And it was the brain
Brain
fog. I
fog.
couldn't think.
Oh my goodness. Yeah.
So then I took a deep dive into food and to see what I already had, as you can probably imagine, a very healthy, balanced diet. But are there foods that I could take that would really help alleviate those symptoms?
Yeah. And what did you find?
Phytoestrogens are my best friend. So, phytoestrogens are plant compounds that naturally occur and they mimic estrogen in your body, as you well know. Um, but they don't produce any estrogen in your body. So, my oncologist was more than happy for me to consume as much of those foods. Now, not to take a supplement that's of concentrated phytoestrogen, but to consume natural foods that contain phytoestrogens as much as I wanted, and they so worked.
Isn't that amazing? So
So
so the phytoestrogens would give your body like relief from symptoms, but they wouldn't he wasn't concerned that they were going, or she wasn't concerned that they were going to impact the whole, like cause the same thing as estrogen would to the potential cancer growth.
Correct. And
Ah,
I thought beforehand, I thought, okay, well, estrogen is needed for reproduction, and I know the role there, etc. But I really underestimated how it is needed for your brain function, your bone, your muscles. It's heart. It is needed for so many different things, and I underestimated that, and that's why we talk about the brain fog and the heart health and the bone health and all of those things with the dropping estrogen. So phytoestrogens in a natural format are perfectly safe for me to have.
great, great. Okay, and they alleviate the symptoms, so the brain fog, like that's, and do you think you mentioned joint pain as well? Like,
Yes, joint pain was probably the most striking for me. I didn't get hot flushes as such, but I would definitely find a raise in my body temperature. So I'd,
temperature.
I'd feel hotter, but I didn't have the dramatic hot flushes or hot flashes that people would speak about. But to give you an example, I judge in the Irish Quality Food Awards, and I did 2 or 3 days where I was judging, and I was eating foods I don't normally eat. And I think I had the baked goods and the cereals and the ready meals and the meats like salamis and sausages and all of those type of
Processed
things. So you're
meats.
just tasting. In 3 days, I was tasting an awful lot of things. So, and when I get home, then I wouldn't really want a full meal because I've been tasting all of these other bits and pieces. But honestly, day 3, my joints were hurting me
Wow,
because
so
I
you wanted
wasn't eating my
the
phytoestrogens and my
phytoestrogen.
well. So I see a difference quite quickly if I'm not eating those foods.
Wow, so you can really feel it in your body, like, yeah, wow. And so, like, for people that are in like perimenopause, that maybe haven't like had such an extreme, like, you know, drop off of estrogen. So, like, is what are the like? So, a hot flush, is it there a sign of when your estrogen's low? Is that how it I'm
Absolutely. So there's about 45 different symptoms,
symptoms,
and
yeah, amazing.
it is different for everyone. But it's often so I didn't think I was in perimenopause and then experienced a cancer-induced menopause. And then I'd look back at some things and I'd say, oh, actually, maybe I was in perimenopause. Maybe that's why my mood was low, or I was getting a little bit more anxiety or
Yeah,
loss of libido or those type of symptoms. You're kind of going, well, maybe actually I was in perimenopause and I
just
didn't
didn't,
realize it, because that
yeah.
can be a very long period. And the problem with getting a blood test to figure it out is a blood test is a snapshot in time. It's like a Polaroid. And so if you go in when your estrogen is really low, well, then it'll show that. But the next day it could be really high, because that is the nature of perimenopause, where you've got the peaks and troughs. So even a blood test isn't really going to tell individuals whether you're in perimenopause or not. It's much more about how you feel and trying to track how you feel and maybe use a symptom checker to identify things.
Yeah, and no, learn what's like what your particular signals are. Like, it's like,
Exactly. Yeah.
yeah. Okay, and so if someone's in perimenopause and they're like their estrogen's high, in the high swing, like if they have if they're eating more phytoestrogens, then does that compound that, or does it like not? Is it kind of like the cancer, like phytoestrogens kind of boost the low if it's low, but they don't compound if it's too high? Does that make that's question?
Yeah, you're not going with the amount of phytoestrogens that you're going to eat, they're not going to be too high or cause any issues that you might get from the high estrogen. And really the foods, which we can go chat about if you like,
Yeah, yeah,
um,
I'm keen to
are
get into
naturally
specifics.
healthy foods anyway. So it's not like, it's about having that little focus and making sure you're getting the right things for you. And one of the things I look at is I say, I would kind of meet people where they're at. And if spaghetti bolognese is the meal that is easy in your house, nobody complains. You like making it, you have it in the freezer. If that's the winner for you, that's great. But just add something to the side that's going to nourish you. So, like, have edamame beans on the side. I would make a lovely edamame bean with pea and mint and feta salad. So you would have that on the side, and that is to nourish you. So just you're adding it into what you're already doing for
Doing,
the
yeah.
family.
Yeah. great. So it's an easy add-on, adjust the sides rather than, hey, everybody, we're just going to eat like edamame beans now and try and sell everyone on that.
Exactly. So that's what just to make it easy, because you already have, more than likely, you're already going to be cooking for a whole family. You may have aging parents, you're probably working, and you're experiencing all these
These
new
symptoms.
symptoms. So you have
It's such
enough
a crazy
things
time of
going on.
life, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. So you don't want to be adding any more stress. It's all about what's easy and manageable. And like I'm sure you do, one effort yielding lots. So I'll make one dish and that will keep for a few days. So I could have it at lunch with my lunch the next day or with my dinner the next day, that type of thing.
Yeah, it's a bit of investment cooking, Fiona.
There
Yeah.
you go. Investment
Yeah.
cooking, love
Yeah. So that's like so really the fight is there anything else, or is it just the phytoestrogens are the thing that you focused on to help your symptoms?
it. Phytoestrogens and then the balanced diet.
Yeah. Okay.
So just making sure the whole diet is balanced, and then there's other things like lifestyle things like making sure I'm getting the exercise and the sleep, and I've also changed a little bit about the way that I would drink water.
Okay.
So I used to drink lots and lots of water, and I used to drink with a meal as well. But now I'm realizing that it's not ideal to drink just before or just after the meal, or as with the meal, because that's going to dilute your digestive juices. So you want to drink at other times. So first thing in the morning, 2 large glasses of water. So I front load, so it makes the day that little bit easier. So there's some of those minor tweaks that I would make. But it's for me, the short answer is phytoestrogens are my best friend.
Yeah, cool. Okay, so you've mentioned edamame beans. So for someone out there that's like, fight what? What are you talking
Yeah,
about?
exactly,
Yeah, like
exactly.
what are your favorite foods? Like what's really yummy in the phytoestrogen family, Fiona?
Okay, so soybeans would probably be number one, and that's where there's been some study on that women in Japanese cultures have much lower incidence of hot flashes. So they believe that's down to
Amazing, right?
soybeans. So a number of different ways we can get the soybean. So it might be tofu, tempeh, all sorts of different ingredients like that. But that isn't something that was naturally part of my diet previously. So the way I would have miso.
Oh
Yeah,
yeah.
definitely I would have miso. Yeah. But so I decided to introduce edamame beans, seemed like the closest fit to what I wanted to. So rather than changing to have scrambled tofu and things like that, because it's not something that I would use a huge amount, but the edamame beans are fantastic. So they are a young or a baby soybean, and I like to buy them frozen. So they're picked and peeled and
Yeah, they're
frozen.
not processed at all. Yeah.
Yeah. And then they're ready whenever I need them. So I can steam them up, pop them into a salad. I can have them just as a snack on their own. I can blitz them into a smoothie. I love adding them into something like a rendang curry. So many different ways that you can have them, or just as a snack on their own with the skin, a little bit of salt. Um, and I find them really satisfying and tasty and
They're
versatile. So
delicious.
they're a
They're
good,
really
yeah,
delicious. Yeah. Yeah, my
and a
favorite
good source of
Japanese
protein.
restaurant does them with they do them with this rhubarb salt. Like they steam them in the pods with with rhubarb salt, and you just like pop them out, like eat the things out of the pods and suck on the rhubarb salt. It's so good. Yum.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay. I
Yeah.
haven't heard of that type before. I must give that a go.
Yeah. Yeah,
So
cool. So they're your number one.
they're my number one. My number two would be lentils.
Love
So in
lentils
Ireland,
too.
lentils wouldn't be something that would be part of our traditional diet. And Australia is so vast and has so many fabulous different influences of different cultures. Um, so lentils. So I make a red lentil dal, which is fantastic during winter time. It is easy, inexpensive, tasty, freezes well, keeps that's one way. But during summertime, what I like to do is a lentil salad. So I get tins of
Mm.
pui lentils, make life nice and easy, and I will pop in some capers, some cherry tomatoes, some scallions or spring onions, and then some lemon zest and juice and olive oil, and you have a beautiful simple salad. And then to add more nutrients, I'll usually put chopped toasted hazelnuts and almonds on top as well. and that'll keep for a few days. So that
Yeah,
again,
yeah.
like
And they
if
actually can improve with a bit of age as well. Salads like that, the
mm,
lentil salads. Yum.
so lentils will be number two. Number three is sesame seeds.
Okay. So
So
tahini as well. Great.
yeah, so sesame seeds so
Tahini.
easy to just sprinkle on things, and then tahini for your hummus, your baba ganoush, your,
Tahini
I love
sauce.
doing roast aubergine with tahini and yogurt dressing. So I do it on the barbecue, and then I drizzle over tahini and yogurt and some chopped nuts and some pomegranate seeds, and you've got a beautiful, tasty dish there. Um, so, and the last, not the last one, but the other main one that's really easy to put in will be flax seeds.
Oh yeah, I love my flax seeds. Mm.
Mm. And so I like a mixture of the whole and the ground ones because, as you all know, I'm sure the whole ones will help keep you regular, but the
Yep.
ground ones, we can actually get the nutrients from it. So to have the mixture of both, I think is great. And oh, what do I do with flax seeds? So I would put them into a smoothie or onto my muesli, or I make the nicest way, I think, to have flax seeds is chocolate flax seed bars.
Ooh,
So
tell me about them, Fiona.
I yeah, the recipe's on my website. So I put in sunflower seeds, pumpkin seeds, sesame seeds, medjool dates, cocoa nibs, goji berries, pinch of salt, nut butter, maple syrup, blitz it all together, and then on top I put a dark chocolate mixed with creamed coconut,
Mm,
and it is amazing. Now it's quite a soft texture, so it needs to be kept in the fridge because it's quite soft. But it'll keep for a couple of weeks. And one small square of that is just, if you
so
just think of all the
satisfying.
nutrients you've got in one piece of that, it is so tasty.
Yeah.
So that's probably my favorite way to have the flax seeds.
Flax seeds.
Um,
Actually,
also
for
make a
anyone that
flaxseed bread.
Australians listening, that we call them linseeds in Australia. So any of the Aussies
Oh yeah.
listening, but yeah, flax seeds as well. Yeah.
And the other one, I make a bread with it. So I grind them up and I mix it with like eggs and molasses and seeds. And it's a focaccia style bread. So it's quite a low flat bread, but it freezes so well. So when you just want to take something out and take a piece out of the freezer and just pop whatever you have that you want to put into it, and you've just got a really nutritious um, bread to have.
So do you grind the seeds yourself, Fiona?
Yes, particularly if I'm making something like the bread that I will do, but we've got a really good producer here that I can get the cold milled seeds that are mixed together. So if I'm doing, say, for example, my flaxseed bars, I will buy their cold milled already ground together. But if I'm making the bread, I will just grind it myself.
Yeah. Okay. Great. Great. So do you have like a spice grinder for that, or just a food processor?
I use like the high speed blender with
Oh,
the
yep.
single blade on it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
it all depends on what device you have, and that's what I do with my cookery demos.
Use
Tend
what
to
you have.
use a yeah, and I use a very standard one because if I use a super high speed deluxe version, then other people can't recreate it at home. So the food processor that I tend to use isn't really strong enough to do that. But if you've got something, I use like a NutriBullet with the flat blade, and that'll help mill up those seeds easily for me.
Yeah. Great. Great. So Fiona's top four sources of phytoestrogens. Um, okay. And so and that's pretty much it on the food front, just like focusing on you mentioned like having a balanced diet. So what does that look like for you, Fiona? Like how would you describe that in more detail?
So, if you want to look at a simple plate, I would say half of it of vegetables, and then about a quarter protein and a quarter whole grains. If I'm looking in more detail, I would say I would make sure that I'm having probiotics. So I'm a big fan of fermented foods like kimchi and kefir and water kefir and kombucha and all of those type of things. Love those. But then if you are having fermented foods and the probiotics and Greek yogurt, you need to make sure that you've got the prebiotic fibers with that as well. So it's making sure you've got lots of nice fibers, with the onions and the garlics and the whole grains and all of those type of things going on. So you've got a good, happy gut. And then it's mainly plant-based, but I eat absolutely everything.
Right.
So I will make sure a lot of the recipes that I will share will be plant-based, but I would also, at this stage in life, put a lot more focus on the protein that I'm getting with each meal. So
Yeah, because
making
that's
sure that
important
I'm
as we
getting
age, isn't it?
yeah, definitely. Um, so I'd be a lot more conscious now of the protein that I have with each meal. But, it doesn't have to be, a large chicken breast, or it doesn't have to be, I will add in seeds or I will add in nuts. There's lots of different
As
ways to a
well.
bit of Greek
Okay.
yogurt. There's so many different ways to add the diversity and up that protein.
Yeah, right. So you do include some chicken, some fish, and but you supplement it as well with the other like plant-based protein sources.
Exactly. So if I'm having, I eat a lot of oily fish as well. So
Yes.
tin sardines and mackerel and things like that. So I mentioned two different salads there, the edamame and the lentil salad. What I'll usually do is I'll make a lentil salad and that'll keep for 3 days. Next day I'll make edamame, that'll keep for 3 days. So my lunch would be a bit of both of those salads and tin of sardines done in seconds, and
Yeah.
it's really nutritious.
Yeah, so good. So good. Great, Fiona. And you mentioned also like that when you were having a lot of symptoms that insomnia was a big thing for you,
Mm.
but then you also mentioned like part of your like lifestyle now is to focus on sleep. So have you got any, because I know like I've had insomnia, it's awful. Like what would like if someone's listening to this and they're like, oh yeah, my sleep needs work, like what would you recommend starting with to improve sleep?
I suppose that the whole sleep hygiene, looking at your sleep hygiene is
Like
really
your bedtime
important.
routine.
Yeah, so the bedtime routine. So I get up at 10 to 6 every morning. So therefore, I need to be heading to bed by 10 o'clock every night. Don't always get there at that time, but asleep by 11 at the latest. I don't go on the mobile phone just before bed. I have a dark room. I use essential oils. I do a little bit of meditation as I'm about to go asleep. Um, and temperature in the room. Because, as I say, what I don't get the hot flashes, but I do have an increased body temperature. So it's the practical things like I have a light sheet and a duvet, so or a doona. Um,
Mhm.
all I can swap them. So while I don't have to get up and change, etc. I can just change it around. But I do know that they've said for people who have hot flashes at night to have an extra pair of natural fiber is a huge thing for me as well. Um, pajamas or clothes or whatever beside the bed so that if and a wet face cloth. So if you are hot, try the wet face cloth. And then if you do sweat a lot and you need to change, just have it there beside you so you're not getting up, turning on the light, really interrupting your sleep. So it's almost in your sleep, you can kind of refresh.
Yeah, right. And so you're not getting your eyes stimulated by light and having to like read, like having that impact on your melatonin and all those things. Yeah, that's a really good tip. Yeah, I like
Now, I got one bizarre
Oh, I love bizarre tips.
symptom.
Okay.
And it's unfood related. Um, so during perimenopause, your muscle tone will go, and you snore when your bottom jaw falls behind your top jaw. And I started snoring. That was one of the symptoms that I'd look back and say, actually, maybe I wasn't
Ah.
perimenopause. So the snoring was keeping me awake. And then I was getting nudges from himself
Mm.
telling me to stop snoring. Um, so what I did was I spoke to my dentist and she said to go to the orthodontist, they will give me a retainer and they glue the top and the bottom together and it holds my bottom jaw forward. And
Right,
it's a
right.
total life changer. Total life changer. So there's a little gap between the top and bottom layers. And so I could drink water, I could breathe if I want, even though I tried the nasal breathing, but I can breathe through the mouth if I want. And I don't snore anymore. It's great, Jules. I just when I fall asleep, that's it, because I was waking myself up, I was being woken up. It was just,
Yeah. And do you think
yeah,
that's impacted your sleep quality as well, Fiona?
absolutely. So I had an app. I was about to go to the sleep clinic, and so they asked me to track everything. So I had an app, and it would record everything all night. And oh my God, the epic hits that I would get when I would snore really loudly, it was terrible. And I used to never snore. So that has affected my, because I sleep through now all of the night, and I have a really good quality sleep.
Right. Okay. And so just go to the orthodontist and get a retainer, this retainer thing, and that.
Yeah, and it just sticks what they do is they stick the top, they just take a mold of your teeth and they stick the top and bottom together, but holding your bottom jaw forward. So it's just a
Mm,
little bit forward of your top jaw. And I mean, I tried so many things. I tried mouth tape. I tried, you know, I'm not overweight. I tried sleeping on my side. I tried all the different tips, that it wasn't working,
right.
but
But this
that
one
worked
did.
for me.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow. So bonus tip there from Fiona. Excellent. I love it. Yeah. Oh, it's been so
And
helpful,
I also
Fiona.
take my magnesium just before bed, because I remember a few years back, I went to see a nutritional therapist and I would say, well, look, my diet is really healthy and balanced. I don't think I need any supplements. And the one thing she said to me was,
Everyone needs
it can be
magnesium.
very hard to get enough magnesium from your diet. So I've been supplementing it, and I take it before bed because not that it helps me go asleep, but it's just in terms of calming the nervous system. So that's part of my routine.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I love my magnesium too, for sure. Yeah, but actually, I take mine with my dinner, so maybe I should experiment with taking it at bedtime as well. Do you know what form of magnesium you take, Fiona?
I can tell you now, I'm in
Just
my kitchen and I will grab it. It's a powder that you dissolve, and it is um, magnesium carbonate.
carbonate, right? Okay, amazing,
Yeah.
excellent. Wow. Wow. Thank you so much, Fiona. I feel like there's so much goodness like packed into what we've just discussed. So if someone's like curious and they'd like to like get some help like eating well through perimenopause, what's the best way for them to find out more about your work?
So if my website is fionasfoodforlife.ie, that's for Ireland, because that's where I'm based. Um, I offer one-on-one consults, but actually probably what might be the most interesting is the 6-week menopause course that I run.
Mm,
And what I do in each of those weeks is I divide it up to brain health, another one for inflammation and joint stiffness, mood, immunity, heart health, and overall health. So I've decided to look at foods in terms of body function and how they work. And on that course, it's an online course, so that's accessible. And it's recorded so people can watch back. And the next one is starting in September. And each week in real time, I will cook 4 or 5 dishes around that theme. And I have some sample menu plans. It's not prescriptive at all, but it's just guiding people in terms of this is how you might include all of these foods. And I also give them a ton of resources. So from experts that I work with in terms of, sleep or supplements or symptoms, all of those type of things, I give all of the resources to those because my expertise are how to cook with ease. So I share the expertise of others on the other sides of the
right,
menopause
from the
field as
health.
well.
Yeah,
Yeah.
amazing. Wow, that sounds great. So everyone should go and check it out Fiona's Food for Life. And you have a podcast as well, don't you, Fiona?
Yeah. So my podcast is called Cook, Eat, Nourish. And it's all about getting people to cook from scratch. And there's a number of different interviews, one with yourself.
Yeah.
And there's a number of different interviews with people within the menopause field as well. So your listeners may like to check that out.
Yeah, amazing. Great. So I'll put links to all these in the show notes if anyone wants to actually just click on a live link rather than try and find these on your own. So thanks so much, Fiona. I really appreciate you coming and having a chat and enlightening me and everyone else around your like unique story. Like I'm really excited to explore the like some more phytoestrogens and play around with those. So fun.
Thank you so much for having me.